Have you found with time you've lost interest in traveling when once you used to love it? Have you lost that interest in driving that fun sports car, or taking your motorcycle out for a ride, or even playing the guitar? Possibly meeting up with some friends regularly. You just don't care anymore. That feeling, that passion is gone away. Okay, if that's the case, ask yourself this question. Have you also been surrounded recently by stressful, anxiety-inducing work environments? Bosses that constantly beat you down with the pressures to perform, the pressures to succeed, the pressures or else because the performance time you may not have a job. If you don't perform, those KPIs are bearing down on you. Have you ever been in a position, possibly then, if you're maybe going through catastrophe, maybe problem areas at home, relationships, the job, any of that, and chronically, have you been dealing with this for a long period of time? Now, I'm no psychologist, but I have been going through some of this journey myself, and unfortunately there is a condition that a lot of us unfortunately deal with. Anhedonia is something that I found out that I was going through last year, because when a lot of us start dealing with chronic issues, stressors, that really just sap the soul from us, chronic conditions, everybody has those ups and down days. But when you're living a life full of perils and catastrophe and stress and chronic stress and things just don't go away, it never seems to get better. This is exactly what I was dealing with. I mean, I look back now, of course, with my job that I fortunately left way back in February 28th, 2024. Now it's almost rolling on 2 years. I can't help but think where my stresses were coming from. Everybody has stresses at home, of course, kids and school and issues there, but predominantly a lot of my stress was coming from at work, going through exclusions, getting obviously new bosses, management, people bearing down on you, KPIs, the expectation to perform. That was never going away, and it didn't seem to be getting any worse. Unfortunately, the players from the top kept pushing down new initiatives, new push, new emphasis, new performance metrics that were going to be monitored, right, and scrutinized by a panel of so-called experts that ensured that you had to perform, or else. And this went on and on and on. Combine that, of course, with a workplace that was full of toxicity, people talking behind their backs, meeting with management to unfortunately talk smack about their co-workers. You know, having workers and peers and people around you constantly looking over their shoulders, and you're looking over your shoulders, and working in an environment that was not welcoming. It didn't seem respectful, and integrity was thrown out the window many years ago. I was working in such an environment, and it stressed me out, and it was taking a toll, a long-term toll, so much. In fact, so I used to love driving a sports car. I used to love traveling and getting excited about booking that trip to Mexico, heading off to the Caribbean somewhere. I used to enjoy those things. I used to love getting on a bike ride. I used to love going play Saturday men's league hockey. But with time, that all just sort of dissipated, and I lost the passion, the verve. I just didn't seem to care anymore. On top of it, the worst part is I think back of those magical dates and magical in sea. Not all magic is positive. When you think about wizard's magic, sometimes things aren't that great. And so, I already mentioned February 28th, 2024 is when I lost my job. But on top of it, there was more to that equation because up to that point, leading to that point, my mother was dealing with ongoing chronic health issues that every time I received the phone call, I didn't know if it was going to be another piece of bad news, a new test result, a new issue, a new problem, a new prognosis. And this went on for 10 years, leading up to my mother's unfortunate passing in March 27th of 2024. Literally, almost to the day, a month after I left my job. So leading and managing these chronic stresses in our lives, losing your parents, because on top of losing my mother, and the 10 years leading up to that with her health declining, my father, unfortunately, I lost a few years earlier. That's right, 2021, for him it was March 5th, and for me March already has a negative connotation. When I think of the month of March, it already resonates as a bad time, a bad place. And you know, it's just like sometimes you have that burger one time, and maybe they put a splash of some kind of special sauce. 3 hours later, you're puking. Now, every time you go back, you're like, I don't want any of that special sauce. And you relate, that correlate, that negative connotation, that health issue, that the fact that you got sick a few hours later, and you assumed it was because of that special sauce. Could have been a host of other reasons, like maybe riding around in the backseat of a car reading a magazine, and you've got motion sick, or could have been a flu that just kicked in at the wrong time, or could have been an undercooked burger, and it had nothing to do with the sauce. The point of the matter is, there's a lot of these things that we start to develop over time, biases, assumptions, but unfortunately a lot of that comes from our experiences, and those experiences that work us to a nub, grind us down to a halt. And sadly, these chronic things, these chronic issues that we all have to deal with teach us some lessons along the way. Some lessons are good, some lessons not so good. But here's one lesson I learned in this journey of life for me. Exiting my corporate work. Environment was absolutely a win, and I can't help but think that it was timed absolutely impeccably. See, because literally I departed from the job and literally a month later all of a sudden my mother passed. This left me now available to manage her affairs, to manage the estate, because as an executive now I had a lot to take care of. It seemed absolutely uncanny. But that doesn't take away from the fact that, leading up to that time, my father deteriorating for 8 to 10 years, unfortunately he had dementia, and that was a decline that went on and on year over year. And it just every time you see him, it was heartbreaking. It was devastating. It crushed the family. We'd get together, my mother, my brother, we'd hug, we'd talk about the old days, and we'd try to make some positive out of what was otherwise a negative situation, predominantly watching my father deteriorate. Then, as this was going on, in parallel, my mother was deteriorating, and her health was declining, and so all of this was balling up to the everyday issues and concerns and chronic stresses that we deal with, driving and problems, insurance, paying bills, and all of those things that we all deal with, which is all about being a big boy, pulling up your big boy pants and getting it done. The point is, when so much of this stress hits you so much so quickly, but also hangs around and hangs around and hangs around and never lets go, it's unrelenting stress. This unrelenting stress, now psychologists believe anonia is a theme, that a terminology that they refer to, that your brain starts to overreact from chronic stress, burnout, overload. You just can't manage it anymore. Your mind is shutting down, your body starts shutting down, and that's exactly what I felt like every single day I went into that job. I felt myself staring out the window for 45 minutes. I could not get my head in the game some days because it was so stressful. All of the things going on at the job site, all of the things, the toxic environment that I knew I was going to be facing as soon as I hit a meeting. You always had those people that were undermining you, trying to show flash and show dash and make everybody else look inferior. And that work environment was not conducive to a very, very happy place. And I think, 10 years earlier, it was an absolute magnificent place because I showed up and I did my job. I did the work I signed up to do. That job profile they tell you about HR. I was enjoying it, and I was living it. But things change. They get political. Then they get political, new CEOs. Next thing you know, there's new policies, new procedures, new emphasis, new priorities. Sadly, it always trickles down. That created a whole new level of stress for everybody, including myself. But on top of that, dealing with health issues, dealing with parents that were declining, this chronic stress just keeps wearing you down. And so there is a positive in all of this, dealing with all of these problems for years. That was about almost 2 years ago now, and I never forget. I look at pictures of my parents still today, my father, my mother. Every once in a while I talk to my brother, and it's never easy. It doesn't get any easier. Or maybe it kind of does. It just sort of takes the edge off. We continue to celebrate the lives of our parents. We celebrate the changes, and sometimes the loss of a job is a win. And for me, it absolutely was. I see it as an actual blessing. Now in retrospect, but at the time it was yet one more stressor piled onto the piece there. So herein lies the conversation about my journey, and many of yours. And what I found that with time since that day, almost 2 years ago now, where I was at the peak of that stressors, the peak of catastrophe, the point where I didn't think I could go on anymore, the point where I thought it was all over, and there was nothing left, the point where it was all dark around me. It was no shock when I lost the interest in driving my fun cars or taking those special holidays or doing anything. I just didn't care, nothing mattered anymore, and I know a lot of you are all going through similar. But as I go down my journey, and I want to reiterate that this doesn't necessarily last forever, because as time goes on, we realize that there are things that are worth having around. I am starting to re-enjoy driving around in my fun toy cars. I do enjoy taking those trips, albeit I never liked flying, but I'm starting to reinvent myself. I'm starting to enjoy time with the family, my kids, my wife, and I'm starting to get all of that. I'm starting to rejuvenate that zest for life, because a lot of times people lose that sense of when you buy a new toy or a new car, you get that burst of excitement, and your brain triggers you and says, yes, this is exciting, and you want to have more and more. And while that's not necessarily a good thing, that does create that sort of up and down. And that's a natural chemistry in the body that says, hey, I got a new car, hey, we're doing a vacation. And that fires you up, only to eventually it slides back down, and we're constantly seeking these new goals, objectives, and excitements in our lives. That was gone for me for a while, but as this journey goes on and on and on, I'm finding now that I'm celebrating my life, I'm celebrating my parents' life, and I'm enjoying the time I have left. Because now, had I been stuck working at that endless dead-end toxic corporate workplace, I'd be in a worse mindset. So my parents, we've managed the estate, the affairs, we buried my parents. We still share memories. So some of those stressors are lightening up. The job is gone, the stressor is gone, and I find myself enjoying life, living life, and getting back to the old me. And Annonia is true, and it's real, and I felt it. But I'm starting to get those feelings and verve and zest for life. They're all coming back, and I'm loving life again. And for anybody going through a similar journey as me, I really hope I can resonate with you in some way that it can get better. You've sometimes got to look at your situation and realize what's harming you. Is it your work? Is it that toxic relationship? You've got to work that through. Look at it. Make some changes. Sometimes those changes are positive. Sometimes they feel hard in the time. But at the end of the day, they're only going to serve you well. Because now as I continue on my journey, I'm finding I'm living life again. And I feel happy and grateful to spend every new day as a fresh new experience and new excitement, a new opportunity to spend with my beautiful family, newfound friends, and my passions and hobbies are coming back. If you know anybody in this circumstance, and I really mean this, somebody that needs a little extra boost, a little extra help, and if you know they're going through problems like this, please be sure to share the video with your friends, family, anybody that you care about that might be in a slump, thinking about issues, and they're dealing with some chronic problems. There is a way. Sometimes you have to make an adjustment, but there is a positive light at the end of that tunnel. And I'm living it, and I'm living proof. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon. Everybody. Bye-bye.